Telegram.
Welcome back, everybody, to the TDT Sports Podcast. We are now in week 3 of the high school football season. Once again, this is Josh Weaver here with
Greg Willie,
Daniel Zapata,
Marcus Hood.
We're all feeling pretty good this week. Better than some of our area teams that are still searching for their first wins of the season. Not as good as some teams who are 2-0. We're right in the middle, maybe like a 1-1. I don't know.
It's not too bad.
Something. But it's about to get real for teams in District 12-6A, as 8 of the 9 open up league play this week. Shoemaker is idle, but everyone else gets at it, where these games are going to matter in a district that looks like it's, I don't want to say up for grabs, but it is going to be crowded going for those 4 playoff spots. So we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll recap Holland's big win over Mart last week. I know the Hornets have been feeling pretty good about themselves here in the last few days. They got a lot of attention for that victory last week, and rightly so. It was a really good performance by them. Look ahead to a few other matchups in the area. We'll have Daniel run down some of our stat leaders as well. But let's take a look at what we got in the area, starting with 12-6A. Temple is at Harker Heights. Belton is at Coppers Cove. Killeen is at Midway. And Ellison is at Waco. The rest of the area still in non-district phase, but some pretty decent matchups out there. Gatesville is at Cameron Yo. Austin Travis is at Salado. Hempstead at Academy, first game on the Bees' new turf field there. Gerald at Ariesel. Rockdale at Lexington. That's usually a pretty good one. Rockdale 2-0, Lexington 0-2 this year, but, we'll see about that one. Robinson at Troy, another good one, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Mcgregor at Rogers, 2 offenses that have been playing really well so far. Bruce Valetti at Chilton. Holland at Florence. Hamilton at Moody. Rio Vista at Rosebud Lot. Bartlett at Wortham. Is that right? Is that close enough? Wortham. All right, cool. We don't pronounce all the letters, just some. Meridian at Granger. San Marcos Academy at Central Texas Christian. Round Rock Christian at Holy Trinity. Idle, as I said, Shoemaker and Buckholz. Let's start with Temple at Harker Heights.
Defenses around the area have been rather idle.
Yes.
Far, even when in action.
Before we talk about Temple, Harker Heights, so let's we got a few 2-0 teams in the area: Rockdale, Troy, Rogers, Holland, and Granger, and they've all gone about that pretty handily. 1-1 teams. Temple got its first win last week. Salado did as well. Gerald also. Bruce Valetti dropped a game, and it's now 1-1. CTCS, same boat. 0-2, Belton, Gatesville, Academy, Moody, and Rosebud Lot still looking to get off the mark. And hopefully they do that this week. At least that's the idea anyway. Yo didn't play last week, so the Yeomen are still 1-0. And Holy Trinity played its first game last week, and they're 0-1.
But how many other teams played in the season opening week and then had a opening?
I don't know.
Right after that? Could have been
or an opening date the first week.
Okay.
Yeah. But if we're going to break it down a little bit more, Cove and Shoemaker 1-1, and Killeen, Ellison, Heights, and Waco, all 12-6A teams 0-2. And Greg, you brought up a good point earlier.
It's about time.
The cumulative record for 12-6A teams going into district play, not that great.
3-15.
Yeah.
You got nobody's 2-0. You got 3 teams that have won a game each, and then you got 6 teams at 0-2. So part of that is some tough scheduling. Maybe in the case of a Midway, playing Euless, Trinity, and Mansfield Lake Ridge. Some of it's just not great play, and then Temple kind of a mixed bag. So 3-15 doesn't look very good. But I still think it's a district that probably has at least 6 solid playoff contenders, maybe 7. Mm-hmm. And then, honestly, maybe 8. I mean, I think Waco might be the only team that you would look at right now and say it's going to be really tough for them to be in the mix just based on results we've seen. I think the other 8 teams. And like Belton hasn't played great yet, but history tells us that they'll find a way to have a good team by midpoint of district.
Yeah.
So it'd be surprising if they weren't at least in the mix for that 4th spot.
Well, you don't want to wait too much longer than the midpoint of district. In 12-6A because
it's such a long district season.
True.
You might be able to stub your toe once or twice early and get back in it.
True, because it seems like this is almost like a week-to-week thing in this district. You're not, at least I'm not sure how these teams are going to look week in and week out. I mean, just judging on the way things have gone so far. But let's go into Temple and Harker Heights. Heights struggled last year, no doubt, and they're off to an 0-2 start. But if there's a okay-looking 0-2 start, I guess they've had one, kind of like Belton in a way.
That's right. Yeah, Harker Heights, last year was a very young team and, started a freshman the last half of district play, just trying to search for a spark. I mean, I think they only averaged like 12.5 points per game last year, so that was a real struggle. I mean, this year they're averaging 31 points a game and well over 400 yards of offense per game. So really, offense has been pretty strong. They've got skill guys. That quarterback, Terrence Carter, is a year older and better. Got a running back named Andre Gebhardt that's over 320 yards, 6 touchdowns. So they're doing some things on the offensive side. Looks like defense is still a bit of a problem. I mean, they've played some good. You saw Round Rock last week. That's a team they kind of lost a shootout against, and Round Rock Stony Point, and they gave up 52. So this is a Heights defense that you can do some stuff against, but I think this year they're going to make you defend them, and it looks like they've got the means to at least get into some score fests and hope they come out on top. From the Temple side, I mean, a year ago Temple just dismantled Harker Heights. It's 45-0. Might have not even been that close. The matchup on the field, played it in a rainstorm, which Temple just ran the ball at will in that game. But I think you'll see a different Harker Heights team that's a little more confident now. This isn't as good of a Temple team so far from what we've seen. I mean, they've still got talent in some key spots, but they got some real deficiencies on the defensive line, playing some very young kids on defense. Mm-hmm. Offensive line has a few injuries. So Temple's not exactly a juggernaut right now, but when you look at it, I mean, Vance Willis played a great game last week at quarterback. That was a big step for him. Quentin Johnston is still a matchup nightmare, if you're trying to scheme against him. So I think Temple will be okay. Usually play pretty well over in Killeen, but I don't think it'll be a cakewalk this time. They're going to earn it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case for everybody in this. You're going to have to earn what you get. I mean, you go into a night thinking something's going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be.
No gimmies.
No, not at all.
No.
And that goes for Belton and its test against Copper's Cove. And the Bulldogs, that's a group that it kind of seems that coaches bring up more often than not as far as a team that will get you, that it's going to play you hard, it's going to play you tough. And if you go in there, with the slightest mindset, if your mindset's off, you're gonna get beat, especially over there in Cove. Bulldogs are 1-1 this season. Lost a close one in their opener, and then won a close one last week over Manor. What's looked good in both games is that offense in the running game, led by Micah Cox, and they got Elijah De La Cruz as well. And Belton coach Sam Skidmore, I mean, he mentioned that scheme that they run as one that's that teams in this district don't see very often, and it's one you really kind of have to prepare for and study and make sure your assignment's sound in dealing with it. But Belton 0-2 last week was an improvement over their opening loss. You go from 48-0 to 42-30. It's still a loss, but I mean the offense made some strides. It looked better. They made some adjustments, moved some guys around. It looked a lot better. But again, they turned the ball over twice. On special teams, they had a bad snap that led to a touchdown from Round Rock. And defensively, it was a better performance. They forced 3 turnovers, but they gave up 40 points and more than 500 yards for the second straight week. So it's one of those things where, okay, progress is made, but it's not enough. And now's the time where you got to start, you have to definitely minimize some of those areas that are kind of striking.
In Cove, they're tough to play at home when you're in Cove, and like you said, that offense that Jack Alvarez likes, it's a physical offense. It's more like run to set up the pass.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to test your physically, and you don't see it that much. It's not that like 4 wide receiver spread
Right.
with a lot of running by the quarterback. It's more like power running, and then they'll throw off of that. And they got a big receiver.
Yeah, they get a couple receivers
So-
over there. I think Jalen Smith maybe might.
Yeah.
But I know Coach Skidmore wants to see just more improvement, more steps in the right direction. Keep up the effort. Start fast, finish well, all that stuff. The last 2 games between these 2 teams have been decided by a combined 9 points. Copper's Cove came back 2 years ago after being down by 3 touchdowns, I think, to win. And last year, it ended up being a 7-point game after Belton was winning by 21 at some point as well. And that one was also in the rain. But, so this one, it's going to be likely close again. Who you give the edge to, I'm not sure in this one. We'll at home, maybe Cove, but recent history, Belton I think has won 2 of the last 3, but we'll see.
And if you go back just to the last part of last season, back-to-back weeks, Cove played Temple and then Longview in the playoffs. So
Right.
they've seen big boy football, and that's probably helped them out quite a bit in just physical matchups and knowing what it looks like and how hard you have to play. So, I don't think anything Belton does is going to overwhelm Cove, but you like to think if Belton executes more to the top of its ability, they got every chance to win this game. But you kind of have to prove it.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think Temple's in the same boat there too, right? I think Coach Stewart talked this week about execution. That's the thing. He's okay with most of what's going on, but there's some areas where he'd really like to.
It's kind of like the old John McKay, the coach from the Buccaneers, asked about his players' execution. He said, I'm in favor of it.
Yeah.
But, no, it's not getting that bad at Temple, but Coach Stewart as a defensive guy at heart, his patience is kind of grown thin.
Right.
Hey, when you start 2 freshmen and a sophomore, you got to expect some growing pains.
Yeah.
The good news is one of his freshmen, they're both playing well, but Torian York, the linebacker, last week 2 sacks, forced fumble that leads to a touchdown. He's not been overwhelmed at all. And then Harrison Pilot, the safety, he's looking like he belongs. So
right.
Probably a good move to bring those guys up to the varsity and let them take their lumps, but they're also hanging. So it's a good move so far.
Well, we'll see how the first week of 12-6A shapes up. Now, let's move on to Holland and its win over Mart last week. The way they went about it, 0-0 going into the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
Is that right? I'm not sure anyone really expected that.
These days that looks like a misprint.
No score. But, then they outscore 2-time defending state champions 20-3 in the 4th quarter and come out with a signature regular season win, kind of one they've been looking for, and they've kind of been basking in that glory. But what stood out to you, Daniel? You were there last week. What stood out to you the most about the way the Hornets pulled that off?
Really, just what a difference a year makes. The 2 years ago, Holland hosted Mart, and they lost 34-7. And Coach Talbert pretty much said the biggest issue with that was that the defense gave up just too many big chunk plays. They just weren't able to kind of limit the explosiveness of Mart like they wanted to, and not a lot of people can. But on last week, it was a completely different story. You have a scoreless game going into the 4th quarter. Mart finally gets down the field into the red zone against Holland, and they kick a 20-plus yard field goal. I don't remember the exact yardage, but they kick a field goal to go up 3-0. And at that moment, you really have to imagine that all the Holland players were kind of, ready to show their grit. That was the moment, they were waiting for, and how were they going to respond? And they responded in a big way. Zane Spinn leads the offense. He had a great game. Didn't put up huge numbers, but just his leadership on the field, made good decisions at crucial times, and he had a 2-yard rushing touchdown where he just used that long frame of his to leap over the pile into the end zone. And Coach Talbert said, they're going to get a photo of that and blow it up and put it in their field house out there. That's a signature moment for those guys. But so they go up 7-3, and again, that Holland defense was just, I don't know if I've seen a defense played to that level since I've been here. This is my third year covering football here with you guys, and it was really on another level. I think it's too early to say if Mart, has lost anything this year. I mean, they're still Mart. They've still got plenty of playmakers. But the way that defense just shut down, especially the passing game, they held Mart to just, what was it?
2 of 15?
Yeah. I mean, something ridiculous. I thought I had it, but they allowed 241 yards total, and maybe 180, 190 of that was on the ground. So the secondary just completely shut down the passing game. Mart's got a couple of really strong running backs, so it was going to be tough to limit them on every single play. But that defense, they would back them up, force a punt. They even had a block punt that led to a touchdown there at the end. And then once again, Zane Spin. These guys were up 14-3, and he finds Caleb Curley for a 48-yard touchdown pass there, just right down the sideline, just to kind of ice it. And to say that the Holland fans were a little excited and that Talbert was pretty hyped up there at the end for that post-game interview would be an understatement. But I kind of referenced it in my story. This was a big win that they've been kind of seeking. This is a team that the past few years, 10+ wins. They've gone several rounds deep in the playoffs last year, a little earlier exit than they wanted to, but I mean, this is a team that has played, teams like Mart and Refugio and other top programs. So that's been the whole thing that Holland has been kind of priding themselves on, is that, they're not a no-name anymore, that, they've really turned around the culture and really kind of just proven that they can hang with these top teams. They want to face these top teams. They're not intimidated going into, the two-time state champions fields. They welcome it, and they put together a heck of a win, led by that strong group of seniors that have been there and done that and have a ton of experience. And those guys, they don't get rattled very easily. It takes a lot, and they really showed it on Friday.
And now I think it's almost equally important that they go in against that struggling Florence team and put together a sound performance, because, I mean, you go from that high to this week, and then, this is one of 8 more regular season games that you have. I mean, we have a long way to go in the season, so, it's great, awesome win, but now it's kind of, let's get back to,
in a way, it almost kind of works out in their favor a little bit to be playing a Florence team. No disrespect to Florence, but obviously Florence is not a great team, and coming off a high like that, you could definitely have a down week the week after that.
Whereas if it was a team that potentially could beat you if you slipped up, and this might be like they might be able to afford to not play great and still win comfortably.
But I think you want to continue playing the way you've been playing too. I don't think you want to kind of dial it back at all or whatever. You definitely have to stay at the same level you're playing.
I almost think for Holland, it's like now that they know really what they've got, it's almost like injuries are what. You want to put games away as early as you can so you can get your main guys out of there.
Yeah.
Because it's starting to look maybe like injuries are more of a factor that could derail Holland than maybe who they're actually going to play the rest of the regular season if they're this good.
Well, and speaking of injuries, they got that win in Mart without Brady Shelton. Without the reigning district MVP. What really impressed me is how they came out against Mart. They got the ball first in that game. Spin finds Curley for a 50-yard plus pass, gets down into the red zone, and then the very next play they get the momentum, but they fumble the ball away. But for them to rebound the way they did, to continue to play at a high level, to do that a week after playing, again, no disrespect to the Moody Bob Bearcats, but they're just not on the same level. So you talk about a strange start to the season as far as level of competition. You start with Moody, you go to Mart, then you play Florence. Very up and down. So Coach Talbert over there is just preaching to those guys to play at their high level. Doesn't matter who's on the schedule. That's the way you have to approach it.
Yeah.
He's a pretty serious coach too, so you wouldn't think he'd let the guys get too
carried away.
Straight. It's like probably back to work on Monday.
Yeah, it's still September, and long way to go for sure.
Accept all your team of the week accolades from TV stations and
Right.
rah rah rah. And let's move on.
Yep.
Play Florence. Let's go.
Yep.
Rah rah.
Exactly. Robinson at Troy. That's one that's kind of sticking out this week. Last couple of years, that game's gone in overtime. I don't know which team won 2 years ago. Robinson. Okay, so it's 1-1 in those last two games because Troy won last year. Robinson's looking a lot better, right, than they were last year.
Well, they're 2-0, but
Yeah.
they've also played Taylor and Gageville, which are both kind of
Struggling right now.
on down years. I mean,
Yeah.
Taylor's 0-2, Gageville's 0-2. So, I mean, it'll be a good see where Robinson's at. I mean, they've kind of been had up and down years, but they're going to have a high power offense. Tommy Allison out there, their head coach, he's been there a while. He knows that system. He's got them going well. It'll be a good defensive test for Troy to see, how they can handle that again this year, because Troy's obviously a team that they've got a lot of key players this year that are back, and they're hungry to kind of they want that same type of season that Holland's dreaming about, really. Mm-hmm. Kind of going deep and thinking this is their year. And, I mean, these are the type of games that Troy's really going to need in this district. And I think Ronnie Porter was probably looking ahead at that when he was scheduling some of these teams, if we're going to be playing the Cameron-Yos, the Rockdales, all these other teams in our area, no matter how the district alignments go, we're going to have to schedule some tough non-district competition, and Robinson offers that every year, usually.
It's a step up in competition with 4A.
Yeah.
I mean, Troy's a big 3A, Robinson's a smaller 4A, but it's still you're voluntarily stepping up and saying, let's take these guys on. They're not very far apart.
I was going to say proximity-wise, they're right there.
Maybe, something like that.
And this one, of course, being at Troy, that does give them a little bit of an edge, but I don't think Robinson's going, well, we're screwed now that we're going to Troy.
I don't know how much home field advantage means, because the past 2 years they've each stolen on each other's home field. So it's been an interesting series so far. Should provide another good matchup.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been settled by just one score, and then 2016 was a big one for Robinson. Like that was like a 56-14 thing. I think so. I don't think it's going to be like that this year. I mean, it could, depending on if Robinson is legit. But Troy's pretty legit as well. So, and they've got one of the top running backs going for them. And, Daniel and I were kind of talking about this earlier today about you just see Zach Urbachik just out normal street clothes, and he doesn't really look like he's going to be your best running back. He's
Slight.
Or it doesn't look like he's real built, but I mean, he's very quick, he's very shifty, and he has some surprise muscles that can just break a few tackles. Plus, he's got a great offensive line in Troy, and that's where it all starts. All the great running backs will tell you that.
His decision making and his ability to read the blocks. One of the Troy offensive linemen, he told me it's such a joy to block for him, because even if we miss our assignments, he's so intelligent and just so quick that, both mentally and physically, that he can see an opening, figure out his angle he needs to take, and then he's just gone in the blink of an eye. So to have a player like that for Troy, who, is going to continue just to run the ball, all game long, it's really just a positive for them. That defense continues to be strong. So, I'm sure Troy is ready to get a little revenge from a couple of years ago, try to get the win on their home field. And like y'all have said, these kind of games are really going to prepare them for the gauntlet that is 10-3-A-1. So,
yeah. Gatesville. No, what?
Go ahead.
No, please.
Share with the
sounded
group.
like
I was just thinking, did I call it 19-3A earlier when I was talking about that district?
I don't know. You covered some volleyball the other day.
I've been here so long, that
not at this hour.
Yeah.
The districts just all kind of run together for me nowadays.
Yes.
I kind of tune out when I'm not the one talking, so,
I sleep. I don't know anything about Belton or Temple right now at all.
You guys are terrible.
Thanks.
Gosh. That's horrible.
Sponsor our podcast.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's still available.
Yeah. And will be probably for the next 9 years. Gatesville at Cameron Yo. What a weird bye week. We talked about it a little bit earlier, or idle week for Yo. Come out and play your season opener, and then you got to wait around to play another one. I'm not sure. I don't know what that does, if that has a negative impact or anything, but I know obviously the Yeomen are going to be ready to come out and play some more football after having to sit out the last week. And they welcome Gatesville, which has struggled so far. I'm not sure if it's offense, defense, everything, but just, they've struggled coming out of the gates.
Yeah, with Gatesville, I'm sure a lot of it. I mean, it's a pretty young team, and a lot of it's still trying to learn things.
That transition,
coach, Luke Howard. I mean, it's kind of a good time to have a new coach, but it's also not a great time because, when you're a young team and you've only had that one athletic director guy, I mean, that's a guy you've kind of built up in the system with, and now the new guy takes over. But being young, I mean, they should learn from him eventually and at least help him down the road. How that helps him this week, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
the coaching change was very late in the game, too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a trickle down, too. You talk to a lot of new coaches when they come in and take over a program. They say, you have to reach not only the varsity team you're coaching, but go down to the JV and then the middle school. You have to kind of, establish something. So, that's, Gatesville might be going through that right now, but
unlike since they're playing Cameron, like when Tommy Brashear got promoted to varsity, he already knows all those kids.
Yeah,
they know him.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's not just it takes longer than others if you're. Because Luke Howard was already there, wasn't he?
Or he was hired over the summer.
Okay.
I mean, he had not worked a football season with him yet.
Yeah.
He was hired over the summer, and he was just going to be an assistant and work for Cooper, and then everything kind of transpired.
Limited interaction and not much time to prepare. If you know you're going to be the head coach in February, you can lay all this groundwork and great plans and relationships. So this is not an easy assignment for Gatesville coming off 55-3 loss to Robinson. And you go to a rested Cameron team.
Yeah.
But again, if Cameron didn't work on their tackling during this off week, they could have some issues. But I'm thinking they did. I'm sure Tommy Brashear's got that ingrained in their heads. We need to learn to tackle, or we're not going to get out of this district. We're not going to win this game. So
and after this, Yo goes to Giddings. So.
Just getting off to a good start, nice, clean, quick start,
and then they host Troy. So I mean, it ramps up, pretty quickly for the Yeomen here.
And Rockdale has some guys that are pretty tough to tackle as well.
Right? Right?
100 wins for Jeff Miller as Rockdale.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Tim Waits wrote a column about that. It was in Sunday's paper. Yeah, Jeff Miller. He's one of the good guys.
Real good guy.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that we've all talked to before. We all kind of like him, and I've kind of known him since he's been here. And it feels like every year he's got to deal with something new. So it's good to see him get the 100. It was good to see him win a state championship a couple of years back. Good to see him get his 100th win at Rockdale. Like Tim wrote in the column, I mean, he is Rockdale. Rockdale loves him. He loves Rockdale. They're kind of meant for each other nowadays. So.
Yeah, 14 years at one place, that's a long time.
That's rare these days.
Yeah, very long time. Real quick, Mcgregor at Rogers. That looks like a good one. Tough test for Rogers. That offense has been looking really good, and they've scored a whole bunch of different ways. But defensively, I think they might need to tighten some stuff up this week against Mcgregor, which has also put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. So that'll be a good one for the Eagles. 118
in the first two games.
Yep. And our athlete of the week, I don't know if we want to give that away or not, but Joshua Minor over there at Rogers has scored offensively, defensively, and on special teams back-to-back weeks, right?
Yeah, you talk about just a guy who can really do it all. He's a two-way starter. They really like to save him for the defense, and it's very easy to see why. 2 games into the season, he's already got 4 interception returns for touchdowns. Excuse me, 2, not 4, but 2 is still pretty impressive.
If you can have averaged one a game.
One a game.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
He's got also 2 kickoff returns. One was a kickoff return for a touchdown, another a punt return for a touchdown. I mean, this is a guy that really can do it all. He kind of helps lead that Rogers defense, just kind of talking to him today. And Charlie Roden, the head coach out there, really relies on him. They expect big things this season for the Eagles. They're kind of ready to make that next step. They've already gotten a lot of attention being ranked this season, so they're going to just kind of do whatever it takes to keep things rolling. But Roden fully understands that Mcgregor is going to be a challenge even at home, so they're just going to kind of continue to do the things that they've been doing well, and where they've struggled, they're going to try to tighten things up.
So before Greg Willie steals the bad joke, would you say Minor is playing a major role for the Eagles? Because I could tell Greg just wanted to say it, but I'm just going to beat him to it.
It's my deep sigh. Hopefully that
You
got
must have
picked up.
ESPN, Marcus. You read my mind.
I know your faces nowadays, Greg. I've known you too long.
I will say this. He's a big part.
Player.
He's a big part of what they do. So
Awesome.
there we go.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun matchup too. Rogers McGregor.
A lot of black and gold out there.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Old school setting. It's nice.
How many frills out there at Martin Field? Good old-fashioned football field.
Do you think we'll have any
Grass.
natural grass fields left in the next 5 years? We'll see.
Buckholz.
Okay. True. What about like 11-man?
Probably not going to pass a bond election to put in a field turf field at Buckholz.
Right.
So I would probably
You got other things.
on that. I don't think Temple's played a game on natural grass in about 12 years now.
Wow.
And I don't know if Bell might be roughly the same.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look that up and ask somebody who saw them 12 years ago or whatever.
There's not too many around here that are left.
Yeah. Well, I guess, the rest of us are going to leave, and then Daniel's going to read off some stats, and we'll close it on that.
Awesome.
If you'd like, Daniel. You don't have to.
You know what?
Do you want us to stay?
You know what? Leave or stay. I have my stats, my numbers, so I've got a job to do, so I'm going to do that for all of our 6 listeners out there.
All right, you got 3 minutes to do it.
Oh, man.
A little public address here real quick. Make
Okay.
sure you pick up Fridays and Saturdays sports sections. There's a lot of local coverage in there, preview stuff, stats, standings, athlete of the week, features.
Yep.
And then a whole bunch of coverage in Saturday's paper.
And
Good
UMHB opens up this Saturday as well, so in Sunday's paper, there'll be that story.
Yeah.
So, a lot of good stuff coming
Annual
up.
stats.
All right.
3 home games to start.
Marcus is already across the room.
He's out the
he's
door.
over it.
All right, roll call. Here's your rushing leaders through week 2. Nathan Quattlebaum out of Bruceville Eddy. He's got 407 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. That's tied for the area high. Samari Howard for Temple has 287 yards and a score. Clay Cooper out of Holland, 260 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zach Hrbacek, the standout from Troy, 257 yards, 4 touchdowns. Carlos Reyna from Granger, 252 yards, also 4 touchdowns. And then from Salado, Work Brown, 251 yards and also 4 touchdowns. So a lot of guys with the 4 touchdowns through a couple of weeks. We'll see who can keep that going. Now on to your top quarterback passers. Jace Robinson with Rockdale. He's really had a hot start to the season. 31 of 51, 698 yards, 6 touchdowns. So that's through 2 games. That's pretty impressive. Moving on, Vance Willis out of Temple, 429 yards, 5 touchdowns. Colin Mraz next out of Academy, 343 yards, 4 touchdowns. Out of Gerald, Aaron Rodriguez, 337 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then wrapping up your top 5 is Zane Spinn out of Holland, 322 yards through the air and 3 touchdowns. He had that big game against Mart, a big reason why the Hornets got the win last week.
Now, you mentioned Brady Shelton earlier. Was he out for very long for Holland?
I'm not sure. I did not know that he was going to be out until
the season opener. Is that what happened?
I'm assuming he had his arm in a sling at the coin toss, so he was there with the other captains. But we'll see. I can't imagine the need for him to be back this week against Florence will be too pressing, but they're definitely going to want to get him back on the field as soon as possible. And now to wrap up your podcast for week 2, your top receivers for yards receiving. Quentin Johnston out of Temple, no surprise there, 305 yards, 4 touchdowns. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale, 236 yards with a pair of touchdowns. Braden Lilly, the standout from Academy so far, 217 yards with a pair of touchdowns. Bruce Villetti's John Lopez coming in with 199 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then wrapping up your top 5 again, Gerald with Joseph Crathers, 196 yards, a touchdown on just 6 catches.
Great job, Daniel.
I'm going to go lie down.
Yep. And good job, everyone, for listening to this. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.